Hi everyone, it's Nicole here today for Honeybee Stamps with a custom background with a sentiment overlay. I knew I wanted to use this small gang sentiment and I decided to create my own custom background that I thought would kind of reinforce that little really small gang greeting from this sentiment stamp set, as well as create some interest for the background because this greeting is pretty large. You can see it here. I decided to use this A2 stitched rectangle. We're going to kind of overlay this over all the ladybugs to kind of, like I said, reinforce the feel of this sentiment, but still give that fun embellishment, that interest, cute critter and everything to the design. What I'm going to do is I picked about 3 of the ladybug designs from the Little Ladies stamp set, and I'm going to kind of play with them a little bit to figure out my placement to get started. I would definitely recommend a stamp positioner tool of some sort when doing this technique because we're doing so much stamping on the background. If you stamp just one thing and it doesn't stamp clearly or whatever the case might be, it kind of ruins the whole look. So I really recommend a stamp positioner. In fact, I stamped pretty much all of these twice simply to get that perfect outline. I like to start in one corner and work my way up and out. I kind of flip the paper this way and that, just filling it all in. Now, originally, I thought I would do the ladybugs and then I would add the heart, the little heart from the ladybugs to fill in all that white space. You might notice in the finished card, there are leaves. And once I got this all colored, I thought, you know, I think it really needs a little pop of color other than the little peachy pink red and the grays. And I'm so glad that I did fill in with some leaves. So we'll talk about that a little bit more here when we get a little further along. The faces from the Little Ladies stamp set are super fun to customize these ladybugs. In fact, I think I got all but one stamped with one press of the Misty here. So this is again another great thing about a stamp positioner tool is that you can stamp multiples all at once. So instead of having to customize each face as you're going, you can kind of do more than one, especially when there's so many different faces. In fact, if you happen to have the Busy Bees stamp set, then you could even grab some faces from that because they're going to be scaled very, very much the same and fill in any faces that you want to with that as well. Next, we're going to color in these images. I kept it easy and colored all of them the same. You could mix it up really easily and stamp them with color them with whatever colors you want to. I kept it more of a peachy pink, as I mentioned a second ago, with our 30, 32, and 35. Instead of going maybe the more traditional dark route, I really kind of have been loving this color combination, and I think it translates really well for this. It also gives me that beautiful kind of highlight area, the lighter area, and still gives you the look of red. So I really like that. Just a couple colors of cool gray for the spots and the face. We don't want the face to get too dark because I think you lose some of the detail. I'm also going back over that dark gray even after I have colored it with R20 to pinken cheeks because I think that gives it a fun, whimsical feel. They're very fun anyway, but I think that just reinforces that. I'm going to color just a few of these ladybugs on camera. The rest I will do off camera to save a little bit of time. It's simply just coloring them all in. If you were creating a card with lots of critters, which I have done many, many times, a scene building card, it would take about the same amount of time. You're simply just creating a background here. Backgrounds lately have been something I've really enjoyed creating. I think it's fun to find ways to create my own that may not always involve inking. I'm always a big fan of inking my backgrounds or stenciling my backgrounds with ink, and I think it's a very fun technique to use your stamps to create your own backgrounds as well. I love this little face with the pursed lips. I think that's super fun. They're just a really, really cute stamp set. This is a stamp set where the images are very large, and when you're using images that are this big, they oftentimes don't go really well with a large sentiment like the one I'm using here today. So this is a way to incorporate both the image that I wanted to use, or images that I wanted to use, as well as a large sentiment, because this is a big greeting. It's going to take up most of the center of the card. You're probably only going to be left with about a 3/4 of an inch, I would say, border all the way around. That really doesn't leave a whole lot of room. You might be able to, you know, shift it around and use one of the ladybugs, but definitely not use a whole bunch like I did here. And I think by using a bunch of these, it reinforces the sentiment small gang. So I love this little small gang here because I think that's kind of funny. So here I've colored in my ladybugs, and I decided to go ahead and grab some leaves. I really felt like I needed something else to mix it up a little bit. So I went through my honeybee stamps, and I decided to grab these leaves from the Spring Blossoms stamp set. Now, most of them are not going to fit in between. In fact, I was only able to use the smallest and the second smallest kind of in between a couple little areas there, but that's okay. If you didn't already know that, if I didn't tell you, you probably wouldn't even notice. Instead, I'm going to take some of the bigger leaves and we're going to use those to just fill in along the edges, just using the tip of them. And that is going to help give enough of that greenery type feel that I don't think it's noticeable. So there are my leaves, and I'm going to use, again, kind of another non-traditional leaf color combination, but something I love a lot. And I think this particular color combination looks amazing with those reds I used, and that is G00, 02, and 09. Laying down my dark color, or my light color, pardon me, first, my darkest color, blend out with my mid-tone, and I'll go back with my light and blend some more. If it blends a little too much, you can always go back with your darkest, which is what I'm going to do, and kind of go over those veins in the leaves to really draw attention to them. The coloring on these cards is definitely the focal point as it adds all of that color to the design. You could even maybe go over the whole background with a text stamp with a really light ink to fill in some of those white areas if you wanted to. You could mask those off in ink. You could color around them if you like to do that. There's just lots and lots of ways to customize the background. Now here is that tiny heart I mentioned earlier from the Little Ladies stamp set. I'm using the Candied Apple Distress Oxide ink to fill in all over the little white space with this little teeny tiny heart, and that fills it in beautifully. Now I'm going to take a white opaque pen and add detail. This is something I love to do when I'm embellishing or creating a scene, as well as creating a background, and that's creating some little highlights on the ladybug spots, some little dots on the cheeks, little dots on the underbelly of the ladybugs, just kind of whatever you want to do here. But it really adds some nice little white detail, brings them to life, I think, and ties in to that white background that we've got going on. Even add some little highlights to the leaves here and there. Now I have already die cut a vellum rectangle using an A2 double stitched frame, and the vellum is going to allow you to see through the sentiment to the background of the card, so we're not going to lose all of that work that we did. This is one of my favorite techniques. I'm going to use a powder tool all over that vellum rectangle. We're going to stamp the sentiment as is right on this vellum rectangle using a clear embossing ink, and then we're going to heat set it with white embossing powder. At this point, you could really keep the card as is. In fact, you could emboss this with any number of different embossing powders, red, black, silver, gold, whatever you like, and I think it would still show up really well. I really wanted to try out the coordinating dies for the Small Gang stamp set, and I thought it would be fun to have a mix of stamped and embossed greetings with die cut greetings. So we're going to just heat set this first, and then we're going to die cut the elements to layer over and under this. And I'll tell you or show you what I mean here in a second. So here's what it looks like just as is. Next, I'm going to die cut the shadow for the words friends and gang from white cardstock. And then I'm going to die cut the actual intricate word from black glitter cardstock and layer that black glitter over the white to make it kind of pop off of there. So the scripty words in this sentiment have a little bit more pop to them, especially where the word friends layers over that white space in the card. I think it isn't as easy to read as it could be. So this is going to really make it shine. I'm using a little Ranger multi-matte medium to glue the shadow and the sentiment in place right over where I stamped and embossed them. You won't even, the recipient won't even know it's there. And the black glitter, I played around with a couple of different colors of cardstock and ultimately decided on the black glitter. I really thought it showed up the best and didn't take away from the rest of the design. So again, we're just going to glue the word gang now over there. Now you might notice there's a little banner there behind the words really small in that banner shape in the greeting. So there is a banner in the die set, and instead of stamping the greeting again, die cutting it with the banner, and then overlaying it, I thought it would be fun to take my banner and pop it underneath and glue it in place. So I hid my adhesive underneath the embossed areas. Then what I did was put an acrylic block on top of the whole thing and let it sit for a little bit. That is to help it stay flat. Vellum has a tendency, especially with liquid adhesive, to try to curl up. And in this case, we really don't want our vellum sentiment to curl up. It's going to ruin the look of the card. Then I hid my adhesive underneath the cardstock areas and some of the embossed areas, and I'm going to put acrylic blocks on top, let it sit there for a little bit until it's completely dry, and that is going to finish off our vellum sentiment overlay. I'm going to do one final little thing for my card to finish it off, and that is to take some Nuvo crystal drops in gloss white, ebony, black, and red berry, and just create some little droplets kind of all over. Some of them on the background, most of them concentrated on that vellum overlay. Adds a fun little decorative dimensional touch to the card, but still is going to allow this card to be very easy to send through the mail because it's relatively flat. There is not a ton of layers here. It's going to mail beautifully. Keep in mind when using Nuvo crystal drops, you want to let them completely dry for a good 24 hours before placing this in the mail so that they don't get smashed. Once this is all done, we're going to glue this panel on a white top fold card base, and that will finish up this custom stamped and colored background with a vellum sentiment overlay card. I hope this has inspired you to try creating some of your own backgrounds with your favorite honeybee stamps. Thank you guys so much for joining me today for this custom background card and sentiment overlay. The supplies I used are listed and linked below the video here on YouTube. Please be sure to subscribe to the Honeybee Stamps channel for more inspiration. Thanks for watching.